Hello and welcome back to the Trick Play Podcast on Fresh Take Network. I'm Simon Chaskovsky here with Caleb Peterson.
Man, I had to go anger bike. I just biked up a hill because I was so mad.
I was up 20 goddamn points. Tyreek Hill sucks. God damn it. I'm so mad.
And I thought I was going to be rich. Feel an entire parking structure with that.
Build an entire baseball stadium. Yankee Stadium is filled with Lambos. Hello and welcome back to the Trick Play Podcast on the Fresh Take Network. I'm Simon Chaskovsky here with Caleb Peterson, and shortly we'll be breaking down all the sports-related news, rumors, and drama that you will want to hear about. And we've got quite a hectic week, as we missed last week, which allows us to kind of go back, steal a couple stories from back there, which is why we're going to be starting off in the MLB with the Dodgers signing the two biggest pitcher free agent names available in both Ohtani and Yamamoto. Then we'll probably get into some MLB rule changes before heading into the NFL and taking a peek at the playoff pictures. We've got, I think you said 3 weeks left in the season, right? Yep. So we can see how things are kind of shaping up and who might be making a last-second push. Then we'll talk about the Chargers firing Brandon Staley and what that could mean for them. And a whole heck of a lot going on over there, as I believe, isn't Herbert out now for a bit? I think they've got them.
Out for the season.
They've got themselves quite a hole to dig themselves out of currently. Then we'll move into the NHL. We'll talk about the Devils somehow finding a loophole in the NHL's no-themed warm-up jersey rule, which has been a rather controversial one. The Senators firing DJ Smith. And lastly, but not least, we've got in the NBA, the Pistons are on a 25-game losing streak, nearing the record, and John Morant is back. So who doesn't love that? Make sure to check us out on YouTube, Fresh Take Network, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, as we have new content coming out every single week on each and every single one of those platforms. Caleb, are you ready to get into it?
Absolutely.
So the Dodgers have made quite a splash in the last couple of weeks. Or last 2 weeks, I guess I should say, signing both Shohei Ohtani and I don't want to mispronounce his first name because I honestly do not quite know how to pronounce it yet, but Yamamoto from Japan, signing him to a 12-year, $325 million contract. And as more of a baseball casual, I did not really know much about him. I watched a little bit of him when he played in the Baseball Classic in 2023, I think? 2022? Which one was it? I can't remember. But anyway. One of those years, and he was really good. He made a lot of American hitters look not very good. And while researching before this episode, he deserves this contract, it looks like, because he's won back-to-back. They're called Sawamura Awards, which is Japan's equivalent to the Cy Young, posting an ERA under 1.7 in each of those 3 seasons, which is pretty nuts. I mean, the more you read into him, the more you can kind of understand why he was given this contract. And now the Dodgers have locked down if Yamamoto works out over in the MLB, 2 of arguably the best pitchers in the league. Once Ohtani can get back to pitching, obviously. But I think this Dodgers team is going to be pretty stupid for the next little while, which, I mean, they've already been pretty stupid for the last little while, but they just got a whole lot better, which there's definitely a point where I think, at least I thought that these two would be going to the Yankees, so I guess I'm not complaining. This is a better of two evils, at least the way I look at it, because, I mean, at least they're in, as a Blue Jays fan, at least they're in the National League.
Yeah. And I mean, as a Mariners fan, I can feel the same. And it's I'm glad to get Ohtani out of my division. He's in the same city. He just moved to the other conference. Perfectly fine with me.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that Yamamoto is choosing to go to the Dodgers here, because really the fact that he got this contract, the fact that it's A, for so long, and B, for so much money, the most in MLB history for a pitcher, which is crazy for a guy who has never played an MLB game. That is all because Ohtani set the precedent before him by coming from Japan and immediately dominating in the MLB and showing that the comparison between the two leagues is maybe if you're dominating in that league, chances are you will be able to dominate in the MLB. Ohtani made that possible, and it's becoming like the next great like it's in baseball you're always searching for the next great thing, right? And it's looking like out in Japan that's where that's starting to come from with Ohtani leading the way. I
And
think
it's
that
not
the
just
biggest thing for
Otani as
me.
well. Like, there's been a couple examples with it,
Mhm.
with you Darvish and the other name that I'm seeing on this article. That again, I don't know how to pronounce a lot of these names, so I feel a little bad. But Masahiro Tanaka, I believe, both
Yep.
having combined 7 All Star selections. I mean, that's got to show something, right? I mean, it's this is the one sport where a player can come from a completely different league and just instantly sign an insane contract and dominate. Like, you just don't see that anywhere
Yeah.
else. Like, there's the only similarity I can think of is like the NBA with the European leagues. Occasionally we'll see a guy come over and he'll be pretty good, but never to this level. Like, never somebody who comes over and just instantly is expected to be a superstar. Like, that's
Yeah.
very, very rare in any other sport. And we're seeing this almost on a, like, how long ago? I think Otani came over in 2018. So, like, once every 5 years, we're just seeing a Japanese player come over and just be insane, sign an insane contract, and just add to the talent that is already spread across the league. I mean, sadly, it's for the for the Dodgers, but I'm pretty excited to see him play. I remember watching him in that World Baseball Classic because I know that was my introduction to him. I hadn't heard of him or seen him prior to that, and I mean, they beat America. I think everybody, or again, baseball casual through and through, but like I definitely would have expected America to win those games, but no, Japan kicked their ass. Like, it was actually pretty cool to
Yeah.
see. Like, I mean, I'm definitely excited for what this means for. It's always exciting to see more foreign players coming in like any sport. We've seen it a lot in like the NHL for the last 20 years with Canadians starting to, while they're still dominating, they're starting to break down a little bit. We're seeing more and more Europeans and just players from all over the world coming in and doing it, and we're seeing that even more in baseball. And I know that has been a more common thing in baseball, but it's still cool to see nonetheless. So I'm definitely happy for it.
Yeah. Yeah. It just shows how much more of a global sport baseball is in compared to anything else. Like you're right, it really is unprecedented in any other sport. Because I mean, in basketball you see it sometimes where you get players like Luca or more recently like Wembanyama, they're coming in, and they're proven that they can like especially with Luca with the sustained success he's had with Wembanyama, obviously we'll see, um, but I feel like there's a difference between that and someone like Otani coming in and immediately being the best player to play baseball in a long time and getting the biggest contract in MLB history by a long shot. It wasn't even particularly close. I think I'm gonna have my stats completely off, but I think the next closest contract was like 200 or 300 million less in terms of the precedent that it set. And then for Yamamoto to come in and get a 12-year deal, like those are completely unprecedented. And no other sport is seeing that other than baseball, which I think is super cool. And if it's gonna give that World Baseball Classic, like you keep bringing it up as your introduction to Yamamoto, that is unbelievable. Like that event, I am not a baseball fan, because you're more of a casual baseball fan, Simon. I'm even more of a casual baseball
Yeah,
fan. I will check the Mariners scores on the Score app maybe a couple times a week,
I
and I'll keep up with the
probably
news. But
I probably watch maybe 30 like Blue Jays games a year. I kind of spread it out.
yeah,
But I mean, I still like to check
oh
in every
yeah,
once in a while. I'm still sad. Actually, this is a good time to bring it up. I am very depressed about the fact that the Blue Jays didn't get Otani. That was so heartbreaking. Like, I this was
they
like
just had to give you a little hope. They had to give you a little hope.
I know, because I the whole time I was thinking he's going to the Dodgers. Why would he choose the Blue Jays over the Dodgers? It doesn't make sense. And then the plane happened. Like, the whole plane thing happened. I was like, holy shit, we're gonna get Ohtani. And then, nope, it was
Nope.
just some guy from Shark Tank, and we're not getting Ohtani. But hey, we got a guy from Shark Tank. Lovely.
I thought it was funny. Apparently, the guy who it was saying on Twitter after the game, it was like, "Oh yeah, I'm really sorry, I'm not Ohtani, but my
Yeah.
6-year-old son throws a mean fastball if the Blue Jays are still interested." Love that. Love
Hell
that.
yeah.
Um,
I think we'll take him at this point.
yeah,
We'll sign him to a
yeah. No,
25-year contract. Let's make it work.
it's an investment in the future. But yeah, no, like it's like going back to that World Baseball Classic. It's that event. Even though I know like jack shit about baseball, um, that got me interested. I was like keeping up with that,
Oh
and
yeah.
I don't think I was able to play games for whatever reason, but I was like continually checking in and more interested in that than I had ever been anything in baseball because it's just such a cool global display of talent for a sport like that. That is really like kind of unmatched. And I believe they're bringing because I know baseball in the Olympics has had a little bit of a rocky history, but we did a segment on it, and I believe it's
When are
coming
they?
back full force.
Yeah, they're bringing it back at some point.
Um,
I thought it was
yeah, they're bringing it back at some
2026,
point.
right?
I think they're. I don't. I'm maybe getting my sports mixed up. I don't know if they're.
I thought it was
Um,
26, but I'm not sure. I'd have to look it. I'd have to double check
it
that.
might be
But
2026.
yeah.
Or no, 2026 is winter, so it's either
Oh shit.
2024 or 2028.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But either way, that's going to be incredible. To just have that full kind of national stage of talent. Um, because when the Olympics are hit and miss for a lot of sports, but when you actually have all of the world's best talent playing for their countries, that's the thing that's just like transcends anything else. Because baseball is a cool sport. Baseball, I kind of hate on it a lot, but I think it's just because it's overdone to the point of um, and not being interesting anymore. But like watching the Mariners try to get into the playoffs or watching them in the playoffs for the first time in like 21 years, that stuff is amazing. And this new wave of players with like Ohtani and Yamamoto setting the stage for a potential like amazing scene in global baseball for years to come, like that's exciting for me. And that's something if you're looking to grow the game of baseball that's kind of been on life support for the last few years, like this is how you do it. And I really hope that um, the Yamamoto signing works out because we know Otani's going to be good.
I
We
mean,
know he's
the
going to
more I look into him, it's
700
just
million.
like it is crazy.
Yeah, and
1.16 ERA last year. What even is that? Across like, like I don't. I can't even think of the last time I would have seen one that low in
it's
any league.
yeah, it's a
Like,
lot to live up to. A
yeah,
12 year
yeah.
highest paid contract in MLB history without having thrown a single pitch in an MLB game. That's a lot to live up to. So I'm not going
No,
to come out
he
here and
can't be a
say he's an
bust.
immediate superstar.
No, he can't be a
Yeah,
bust. Like it's
he can't be a bust.
like there's
They by giving him this
nothing.
contract, they have said there is like he has to live up to the potential. Which I mean, I don't know him or how he deals with pressure. Obviously, an amazing player.
I mean, he's
Hopefully
never
that
had
doesn't
an
sink in.
ERA in his 6 year career over in Japan over 2.4. Like,
Yeah,
what?
which is crazy.
It is crazy. It's just like I don't even have words to describe how stupid that is. Like, I can't like how many players in baseball in the MLB have ever had? Obviously, he's going to have a step down in stats. I think that's a safe assumption. Like
Yeah,
he's not going to come into the MLB and throw 1.16 ERA. That's not happening.
yeah. The
But
the question the question is how sharp that step down is. Will
yeah.
it be a step
Yeah.
down that still places him in like Cy Young contention,
Well,
or
I think
will it be a like major step down?
I wonder what Otani's stats in the Japan League were like.
And I mean, the thing about Ohtani too is that his stats probably will be, especially in terms of pitching, will probably be not as good, just because Ohtani's thing is his dual threat ability. Like that's what
Yeah.
makes him
Yeah.
special.
I think it's still an interesting thing to take a peek at, though.
Yeah, just to see the
Oh, nowhere
difference.
as good. Wow. In his last year, I'm trying to understand this. Um, no, it's still pretty impressive, but it's nowhere close. Like
Hmm.
I'm seeing a lot of like he had a lot of like 3.2, 3.42. He had a season at 1.86. 2015 2.24. Like still impressive, obviously, but when you go from looking at what Ohtani did to looking at Yamamoto's stats, it's not close. Yamamoto is like at least compared to what Ohtani was doing. To be fair, Ohtani was younger, but c- comparing them isn't very close. Yamamoto blows him out of the water.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like the other thing to think about if Yamamoto plays up to this contract and is a Hall of Fame level pitcher, um, how much do you think that opens the door for other players in the Japanese
I mean,
leagues or even other
I think the
leagues to
door's
come to
already
the league?
wide open. I think that
Yeah, but even
obviously it'll
even
keep
even
going.
then, like,
Yeah.
because right now the MLB is kind of just skimming the superstars off the top. It's like Ohtani, Yamamoto, guys you can't miss, but like you wonder like how much more talent is in there. Um,
Oh, I'm sure there is.
because like yeah, because Yamamoto is playing at a significantly higher level than the rest of them. But even those like top 5%, like I'm sure they could compete in the MLB too. It's really interesting. It's really interesting. Um, yeah,
The longer I look at the stat sheet, the more it just it's I seriously don't even know what to say about it. Like it's stupid. This
yeah,
if this guy can do anything remotely close to what he's got here, he's going to be insane in the MLB. That contract is going. He might be the highest paid pitcher in the MLB, but if he can get anywhere close to a 1.16, people are going to be calling him underpaid. Like,
yeah.
I
That's the
mean,
thing with these long-term contracts, right? It's like it's a huge risk in terms of the bust potential, but if he lives up to like 70% of what he's being hyped as or what those stats are, then yeah, you're right. It's going to be an underpay. And
yeah.
with how long term it is.
I mean like the one nitpick that people had on him that I'm reading about is that, and this should show you that how small of a nitpick on it because it's not even really that. It's very minor. Is that his fastball's only, and I emphasize only 95 miles per hour. Only.
Oh, wow.
I know. Wow, golly gee. I mean, yeah, literally in the article it says while 95 miles per hour alone won't blow anyone away. It's like Jesus. If he makes it work, he makes it work. I think that's quicker than a lot of pitchers in the MLB. A lot of elite ones as well. I
Yep.
don't think oh god, I just put my I don't think I could name one off the top of my head, but I'm going to make myself look dumb. Does Garrett Cole throw that fast of a fastball? I feel like he's one.
I would assume so.
97. Whatever. I don't care. Point still stands. What's 2 miles per hour? He'll be fine. Like,
Yeah.
there's plenty of pitchers in the MLB who survive with 90 mile per hour. 95 will still kill. And from what I'm reading, he's got a killer curveball. Splitter was also really, really good in Japan. His cutter is what he uses the least, but he still throws it at 92 miles per hour. I mean, what else can you say about him? He's going to be good. Like I don't know
Yeah.
if there's even with how I don't know. Even with how like I don't know, I'm having a stroke. I'm tired. First segment of the day. Week off, whatever. We're getting back
Yeah.
into it, but yeah, he's gonna be good. I seriously, even with
Yeah.
how like mental pitching in baseball is, I seriously just don't. This guy's confidence has to be through the roof. Like this, I mean, he's got to just be ready. I don't think there is a player on earth more ready to go up to the MLB and just instantly dominate.
Yeah, and I mean that's what they're saying with how
Yeah,
long they're paying him for. Paying him until what, 2035? I'm
yeah.
like we're gonna be in our 30s at that point when this contract expires, like
Oh,
to
yeah,
get perspective on how long that's gonna be.
yeah.
Um, But let's say that because how long was Otani's contract? Was
Oh,
Otani's was similarly
it
long.
was
I think it was
similar.
like
I was
maybe
it
10.
12? I can't
It
remember.
was I don't know if I don't know if it was matching. I feel like it might have been 10. Um, yeah, 10,
10.
10.
That makes sense
So
though,
let's
because
say okay.
Ohtani is older.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but
Um,
I mean, another thing we can talk about as well is how they're like structuring his deal. I don't. Did you hear about that at all?
yeah,
Yeah, because
of
I mean,
how
they're
they're
going to be paying him
deferring most
seven
of it
hundred,
until after he leaves.
pretty much. Yeah, like he's going to be only getting paid 2 million per year for the next 10 seasons. Like, I mean, yeah, the Dodgers are going to win everything. They're going to be rough. Like,
I don't understand how that works.
neither
'Cause then, I
do
mean, I know
I.
baseball doesn't have a salary cap, so it doesn't even really matter.
I guess.
Um,
I guess. But I mean, he's gonna just get paid like 70 million, or not 70 million a season. Oh no, it kind of is 70 million a season. It's close, I think. Like after his probably once he retires. I mean, it's a smart. It's honestly kind of smart on his part. Like I respect it a
it is because
lot.
I mean
Like
it's so smart on his part because I mean he's going to be raking in that $2 million. Obviously, yeah, anybody's going to be fine with $2 million
yeah,
per
no,
year,
that's gonna
but
you'll
but
live.
he's also making stuff from well, he's the player. He's going to be making stuff from endorsements and jersey sales. Like there's going to be all sorts of
Yeah,
other income that he's getting, and then once he doesn't
you
have
gotta
that
wonder
anymore,
how much
now that's
Otani
when the
makes
real
on
money kicks in.
advertisements and stuff. Like he's got to be and sponsors. He's got to be making. He's
I see
easily
him on
making
like
ten
the
million.
New Balance ads all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's got to be making at least 10. Like with even without his contract. So I don't think he has to worry about money. He'll live.
Nope. Nope. Okay, I'll kind of end. I think I'll end this segment with a question for you, Simon.
Okay.
So Otani's deal is 10 years, and Yamamoto, barring things going wrong or whatever, he's going to be there that entire time too. The next 10 years, how many World Series titles are the Dodgers going to win?
Oh. Well, a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
they. I feel like we've been waiting for the Dodgers to really take over the MLB, and it hasn't really happened. I know they won one at some point in the last 5 years, but I don't. I mean, this is the best team they're going to have by far. Once Otani's healthy, this team's going to be ridiculous. I
Yeah.
don't know if they win next year. So,
No,
yeah, I would.
just because he's not healthy. Yeah,
Well, I think Otani can hit, but I don't think he can pitch. I think that's what they
he
were
can't
saying.
pitch.
So, and whether that's an issue for the Dodgers have the depth to deal with it. Like they have the stupidest
Yeah.
like pitching thing ever, and Otani will still be an incredible hitter. So I don't even think that'll be too big of an issue for them. But I don't know. I just don't think it takes 1 year to get used to a new team, really. So I'd say they don't win this year, but they're probably ballpark, probably four. I'd say they win four. Because
Or yeah, I
yeah,
was thinking
Otani's had some injury issues. Let's assume he goes out for a couple more seasons every once in a while, right? Like,
yeah.
yeah, four. I think four is a pretty safe number. But if in 10 years we're looking at it and they won half and they actually won five, I don't know if I'd be too surprised. They've got the stupidest team in baseball. It's not close.
Yeah. It's set up to be the next dynasty. And I mean, it is tough to make projections this far out because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's so like things can happen in the playoffs, especially when it's like only a 5 game series or whatever. Like stupid shit can happen. Um, I'd say 3 to 4 is pretty ballpark, which it feels like I'm lowballing them,
Yeah. Yeah, that's the
which
weird thing,
saying
right?
they're going to win 3 championships, that feels and it feels for any other team that's astronomical. Like
Oh yeah.
that is a dynasty.
I would love for
If
two
you win three
championships with the Blue
championships in
Jays.
10 years. Yeah, like most teams don't get one in like 50 years. So to say that it feels like we're lowballing them, that's just how insane this team is going to be and how impactful this last week has been for the Dodgers. Has any baseball team ever had any I'll take it up another notch. Has any sports team ever had as good of a week as the Dodgers have had this last week? That's like, because you obviously winning championships, but like in terms of setting yourself up for the future, you've just signed the two hottest commodities in baseball for the next decade plus.
I can't
That has
think of
got to be
anything.
one of the best. That's got to be one of the best weeks a team has had in a long time. And I cannot imagine how ecstatic Dodgers fans are. And props, honestly, to Dodgers management and ownership for being
Yeah.
willing to spend this amount of money
Well,
to
they've
invest in your
they've
team.
always been willing to spend that much, right? That's the Dodgers for you. Like
Yeah,
they
and I
they
mean it's
now.
because they're a big market,
What's their budget look like now?
but still,
I'm
it's
curious.
got to be through the roof.
Like budget 2024. Um. Okay, that's with taxes, but we can ignore that. Dodgers are the highest, but only by $1 million. I don't know. Is this when was this? This was 3 hours ago. So
Yeah, I mean, I
they
wonder how much Ohtani's weird contract situation factors into it.
Yeah, so they are at 285 million. The Mets, who are in second, are at 284. And yeah,
Hmm.
actually, that's a good point with Otani's contract. Yeah, you have to. You That's a really good point. Actually, I wasn't even thinking about that. Like, how much does that actually impact it? What would their if he never changed it? What would their salary look
Oh,
like?
well, I
It'd
mean, it's
be
70 million per year, so it would top them. So
350.
let's assume that this is at 2 million. Yeah,
Oh my god,
it's insane.
that is insane. Okay, well we can move on. I think we've
Yep.
we've talked about how good the Dodgers are going to be and how we're all going to have to cry a lot in the next 10 years. Enough. We can move on. We're going to talk about the NFL next.
All right. So we're getting into the last 3 weeks of the NFL season, and it's probably one of the most congested playoff fields I think I've ever seen in my, like, whatever it's been now, like 10, 11 years of watching the NFL. You've got we're 3 weeks left. There's only six teams that have actually been mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, which leaves, what is that, 26 teams that all still have a chance to take that last spot. Um, and it's really interesting because there's a lot of teams that are kind of congealed with about the same record. I'll give the so four teams have clinched. We've got the Ravens, Niners, Cowboys, Eagles. They've all clinched. Um, Dolphins, Lions, Chiefs. They haven't clinched yet, but their chance of making the playoffs is very high. Um, but the rest of these teams, it's all up in the air. So we'll just, I don't know how you want to do this, Simon, but I was thinking we could just go through all of the teams that are kind of on the fringe and kind of see what we think about their chances to make it. You want
Yeah.
to start in the AFC or NFC, Simon? What do you think?
Oh. Hmm. I mean, AFC might be a bit more interesting just because there is only one team that's clinched. That's
Yeah,
pretty insane to me at this point. But there is quite a few who are very close.
yeah. So okay, we'll start in the AFC, and we'll start so out of the teams that are still alive, there's a couple that are Raiders and Chargers are technically still alive, but their chances of actually doing anything with that are pretty slim. Chargers current odds are less than 1%. Raiders current odds are 2. So we'll get them out of the picture to
Yeah,
start.
we don't need to
We'll start with
touch that, but
we don't need to dwell on them. The Broncos. So we'll start with the Broncos. They are very interesting because obviously they had the rough start to the season. They went 1-5 to start, and they've been on a hot streak. But they're coming off a disappointing loss in Detroit. Um, Simon, what do you think about the Broncos potentially making the playoffs? I'll pull up their schedule to see what
yeah,
they're
I was
heading up
doing the
against. Their
same.
last three games are Patriots, Chargers, and Raiders, all very winnable games.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, that makes me feel a lot better about their odds, actually, considering their opponents for the last couple here. Because I mean, we just spoke on how the Chargers and Raiders, not very good teams, especially now that the Chargers don't have
Yeah.
Herbert. Raiders just weren't a very good team to begin with. I mean, they have a very easy schedule. This I think the only thing stopping the Broncos at this point is the Broncos. I they just got to they just got to do it. Right? It's as simple as that. They just can't
Yeah,
lose a game that they should win. I mean, this
yeah,
has kind of been
and
a comeback year for a lot of players on this Broncos team, including Russell Wilson. It's been
yeah,
very much a bounce back year. So I mean, I would definitely not say they can't do it. I think they've definitely got a very good shot at it. But I guess we'll just have to see how the cookie crumbles on that one. I'm surprised their odds are only 28%.
yeah. I think the biggest thing for them is just the amount of competition that they have because it's when you have so there's in terms of the wild card spots, you got the Browns at 9-5 right now, and then there's a whole bunch of teams at 8-6: Bengals, Colts, Texans, Bills. The tricky thing about the Broncos is that they need at least two of those teams to drop a game, and then you have to have the tiebreaker over them. That's
Hmm.
what's kind of tricky about the Broncos, is because they can win all of those games, but unless they see people in front of them start dropping games, it may be out of their control, which is part of why that Lions game was so big. Um,
Yeah.
just because we're getting to the point of the season where you can win out and you can win all your games, but it might not matter just because of what you've done earlier in the season, which kind of sucks for a Broncos team that you're right has been resurgent. Um, so that's the Broncos. They have a decent shot to get in, but they're gonna need some help. We'll move on to the Steelers, who are practically a dead man walking at this point. Their latest game against the Bengals. Um, that if they win, their percentage of making it goes up to 13, but if they lose, they're practically out of it. What
Mason
do you think
Rudolph is
in terms of
starting.
the out? Mason Rudolph is starting. Good point.
Yeah.
I
Like
think
it's
is the outlook for them potentially beating the Bengals and then going on. They have, I think they have the Seahawks after that. Do you give them any shot to make the playoffs?
well, I don't think they're necessarily fighting for the playoffs. I think at this point they're fighting to keep Tomlin's streak alive. I mean,
Yeah,
no, I would not bet on them making it. Cuz I mean, they almost have the opposite issue of the Broncos where their schedule is rough. Like Bengals, Seahawks, Ravens.
yeah,
Those are three good
yeah.
teams. Like I think they're gonna run into a bit of a brick wall because I don't think they beat the Bengals. I doubt they beat the Seahawks, and they're definitely not beating the Ravens unless the Ravens just don't play Lamar or something in the last game or two. Because I mean they've already clinched, so like who knows what could happen
Yeah.
with that? I guess it could just be a last game fluke, but I don't think once we get to that game, I don't think it's gonna matter.
No. And I think the biggest thing for the Steelers is I think they already had their chance. If you look back at their last three games, you talked about how rough their schedule is now. They had an
Yeah,
absolute cakewalk. They lost to the 2-10 Cardinals by 14 points, and then they lost in prime time to the 2-10 Patriots. You lost back to back to two-win teams. When I think if they won both those games, they're in a playoff spot. You're sitting at 9-5. Even if you lose a couple of these next few games, you're probably getting in. Um, it's really just a testament to. I think the Steelers team have been the biggest frauds. I think they're a lot worse than their 7-7 record says. Um, just because they've been squeaking by, finding ways to win. Mike Tomlin's putting them ahead. Um, I don't know. I don't even know. You're saying they're playing for their streak. I don't even think that is possible for them
no,
to
I don't
win
either.
two out of their next three games.
Yeah,
That's going to be rough.
God, I wonder who would
Um,
have could have predicted at the beginning of the year that Tomlin's streak would end. People doubted me. I had people come up to me and
it's
go,
true.
Simon, that is a terrible take," and I was like, just you watch. There is a graphic on the Instagram. Go check out the Instagram. I am the best NFL analyst in the game, apparently.
I mean, yeah, it looked a little bit rough to start off with how good they were doing, but
Yeah,
they've fallen back to earth just like you predicted.
yeah.
And speaking
Yeah,
of good
no,
predictions from
I
our
100% definitely predicted that they lose to the Colts, Patriots, Cardinals, and whoever else they lost to. 100%. That was the exact. Don't go back and watch
I
our
mean,
episode. That's
I
exactly what
mean,
I said.
we don't need to look into the details. All you said is that the streak would be over, so
That's all I'm
that's all
saying.
we need to
Yeah,
care
there you
about.
go.
Um, Speaking of potentially good predictions from our AFC preview show, the Bills are currently sitting outside the playoff picture, which is something that
I think you predicted that.
this one
Yeah.
right here predicted at the start of the season. Not looking too great for me though, because I think the
Yeah.
Bills out of any of these teams have one of the best shots to make it.
I mean, they've
Um,
got a
they've had
wild
a
they've got a wild probability right now. That's another one. This is a playoff game for them, basically. Like if they win, they have a 70% chance of making. If they lose, they have a 28. The one difference maker in that entire thing is that they're facing the Chargers.
Yep. And then after that, they're facing the Patriots, who beat them earlier in the season. It must be said, but I mean, at this point, the Bills are a different team than they were in the first half. That Dolphins
Yeah.
game, at the end of the season will be tough, but I think at that point they could probably afford to drop one. Um, yeah, it's gonna be fascinating. I think that they've looked significantly better in the last stretch of the year. They had a really rough stretch before, like after that Broncos loss, dropping games to like the Jaguars, Patriots, Bengals. Wasn't looking too hot, but they've just rung off wins against the Chiefs and the Cowboys, two of the best teams in both of their respective conferences, and now have a relative cakewalk schedule that can hopefully. I mean, I don't. As much as I would like to say I was right, and that I predicted the Bills to miss the playoffs, I think they are one of the best 7 teams in the conference. And I think if a team like the Colts or as much as I love the Bengals, even the Bengals get in ahead of them, that's going to make for less exciting football than if Josh Allen and a Bills team on the rise makes it in. Because as if they make it in as a 7 seed, they might be the first 7 seed ever to really make some noise because they are a good team.
Yeah. No, that 8-6 record feels fake. I mean, they've since the start of the year. Sure, they've had a couple bumps in the road, but I think most people figured that the Bills would be one of the best teams in the AFC this year. And just like you said, they definitely are going to have a chance to show that once the playoffs actually come around. But that AFC is rough across the board. Like there's a lot of good teams there. So I mean, we'll just have to see what happens. I think it's going to be this is going to be a super exciting playoff, I think, cuz there are a lot of teams that could win it all this year. I think it'll be an interesting one, that's for sure.
And I'm really hoping that teams like the Bills make it in because I do think there's some pretenders in the mix. I don't know how much a Gardner Minshew Colts team is actually going to make noise in the playoffs or a Joe Flacco Browns team. I can't doubt him too much because I mean he's been playing the whole season and they're in a playoff spot right now, which is more than I can say for my team. But yeah, no, like we'll get to them later too. Another
Minshew,
team that's I think
he's had a pretty good year. Yeah, like looking at his stats, honestly.
he has a pretty good year. Has had a pretty good year. Like it's been impressive. Speaking of people who have had a pretty good year in the AFC South, CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans.
Oh yeah.
Probably the biggest surprise of the year. I don't know if anybody saw this coming, even if you were the biggest Stroud supporter to start the year. They are 8-6. Just like you said about the Bills game, this is another one that's like basically a playoff game coming up against the Browns. If they lose their probability, that is a tough game. Their probability will drop to 32% if they lose and 74% if they win. That's pretty stark.
I will say that I think
you gotta hope CJ Stroud's back.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think if the Texans don't make it this year, I think if the NFL is rigging any games in their so-called script, I think it'll be these next couple ones. Because I think everyone involved just wants the Texans in. Like this has been such a just like storybook season for this Texans team, just all across the board. That I think. I don't know. I think it'd be really disappointing if they somehow didn't make it at this point.
Yeah. It really would be because they've had quality wins against quality teams. They have weird moments where they lose to the Panthers. What's up with that? Or they'll lose to the Jets, and make Zach Wilson look like a starting NFL quarterback. Um, they're an interesting team, but I think they're good enough to make noise in the playoffs. They're um, again beating teams like I think that they beat the Bengals with Joe Burrow, which is no small task. Beating the Broncos, keeping it close against the Jags. Um, Lots of good quality wins in there. Beating the Jags earlier in the season by 20 points, who I don't remember that. Um, they are a good, fun, interesting team. They've had the injury bug hit them a little bit. Stroud didn't play the last game with Case Keenum kind of keeping their season alive. But if he's back, that game against Cleveland, it'll definitely be one of the better games of the week. And I think the Browns are looking a little bit better because they have a game up, so they'll probably make it no matter what. But with Joe Flacco at quarterback, you don't really know. That could just be a straight up playoff game in terms of who's getting in and who's not.
Yeah.
Um,
Or Joe
Another,
Flacco
we'll
goes
move
all the
on
way
to.
and wins his second Super Bowl.
It's not entirely out of the realm of possibility.
Wouldn't that be
Um,
just lovely?
oh yeah. Um, we'll move on to who we were talking about earlier with Gardner Minshew and the Colts.
Yeah.
Probably one of the biggest surprises of another one of the biggest surprises of the year.
I'd argue a bigger surprise.
Especially
Like, I can
yeah,
definitely
especially
say when
when
Anthony Richardson went down, I thought this Colts team would be dead in the water.
yeah, because who would have thought that with somebody like Gardner Minshew they could pull anything like this off? But they've been such a gritty team. They've
Yeah.
been staying in games
And they've
and
got a
just
fairly good
pulling.
roster. Like that's something that not a lot of people
Mhm.
talked about at the beginning of the year. Like they have a lot of very skilled players. I think I don't think it should be as surprising as it kind of was to see Gardner Minshew, who's kind of just a field man. Like he can just go out there and just like use what he's got, and he's gonna make it work. Like I think
Mhm.
this is, I don't know. I don't think it should be as surprising as it is. Is kind of what I'm saying. Like they're just
Yeah.
making
Uh,
making it work with what they've been given.
and a lot of it is coaching too, with
Yeah, that's it.
Shane Steichen coming in. Because you're right, they do have a talented roster, but this is also pretty much the same roster that Frank Reich had last year, and they kind of um, fell off extremely hard at the end of the year last year. So for Shane Steichen to come in and elevate this team without that kind of franchise quarterback that they had for the first few games, it's been extremely impressive. Looking at this, they've won 5 out of their last 6. Not all of them were world beaters kind of opponents, but um, all still quality wins. Some against teams that are in playoff position right now, like the Bucks or the Steelers. Um, yeah, no, it's going to be interesting. The next 3 games are relatively easy. They've got the Raiders, the Falcons, and then they've got the Texans game at the end of the year that'll probably decide who makes the playoffs and who doesn't. Um, Going to be really interesting to see how this plays out for the Colts down the stretch. We'll move on to another team that is surprising, perhaps not for the reasons that you might think. The Bengals, who obviously, I mean, the Bengals were my Super Bowl pick at the start of the year, so it's not like it's surprising that they're here. But for them to be there with Jake Browning is kind of the surprising factor. I don't know if you've watched any Jake Browning football recently, Simon, but
You know,
they've looked pretty good, and it doesn't seem like they've taken that much of a step back from Burrow, which is surprising to say the least.
yeah, no, I can't say I have because I have not had a lot of time to watch a lot of NFL, but I have heard about it. I think that it is insanely impressive that what he's been able to go out there and do. And if he can keep it up, I mean, sky's seriously the limits with this Bengals team. At least in my opinion, I think that they can go far. It's just whether I don't know when you're playing with a quarterback as inexperienced as Browning is, at least in this position. I think that it is going to be pretty interesting to say the least to see what ends up happening.
Yeah, and he's proven himself time and time again since he's come in the lineup.
And he's gonna have to keep doing
because
it.
he's going to have to keep doing it, especially with how, I mean, how many teams we've gone through already in the AFC. Like, you can tell this is a crowded field. Um, but you've got teams in his, I believe he started 4 games, lost to the Steelers to start, but since then he's rattled off wins against 3 teams, all of which are currently in the playoffs. Jaguars in overtime, Bengals by 20 points, Vikings in overtime. Those are good quality wins. And it's a tough schedule for the Bengals. This is probably their biggest hurdle. They play the Steelers, which is probably a win.
That's a win.
But they're still technically in playoff contention. But then they've got the Chiefs and the Browns to finish the season.
Ooh, that's rough.
I think if they can pull off one or both of those games, then my camera goes falling to the ground. I think if they can pull off one or both of those games, they're in.
No, I don't disagree. I think it's a similar. They're in a pretty interesting spot where it is completely surrounding Jake Browning. That's the story, right? It's you like I said, he's gonna have to keep proving himself. Can he win in this position? Can he win in that position? Can he win in the playoffs? That is going to be the story for the Bengals for the rest of the season. Like, I think, and if he can prove everyone wrong, like, it's with the type of season that he's had. I mean, he's kind of setting himself. I'm assuming he's not signed to more than a 1-year deal. If he goes out there, is he?
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. I believe he's an exclusive rights free agent, so he's technically a free agent, but like the Bengals have first dibs essentially in terms of re-signing him, kind of like an RFA in the NHL kind of thing.
I think I know what you mean. I was gonna say though, what's the chances the Bengals actually want to bring him back? Obviously, they have Burrows. Like, I think there's a good chance he could go somewhere else if he goes out there and continues to play the way he's playing. So yeah. I think he's playing for a contract right now or a future contract. I don't know where that would be and what that would necessarily mean, but I think if he can keep it up, he's making a career for himself this season. So I think, and there's a few quarterbacks this season that are doing that. I think it's pretty insane when you look across the especially in the AFC. I mean, Gardner Minshew, Browning. We've got Joe Flacco for some reason on a 9-5 team. Like, it's pretty weird right now.
Yeah, and we can move on to the NFC now, but like, because we won't go into the Jags and Browns because they're probably gonna make it. If they win, if the Browns win, they're pretty much in. And if the Jags win, they go to almost 90%.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting. If the Jags lose or the Browns lose, then it becomes a conversation. But we'll move on to the NFC. NFC is a little bit less crowded. We've got, I'd say, about the Packers and Falcons have kind of played themselves out of the conversation. Currently, the Packers sit at about 18%, Falcons at 11%. They've kind of fallen off in recent weeks. But I think it comes down to about 4 teams that are competing for the last 2 spots, and that's the Saints, the Seahawks, the Rams, and the Vikings. We'll start with the Saints, who just lost on Thursday night to the Rams. What do you think about this Saints team in terms of where they stand? They're currently at a 22% chance of making the playoffs.
Well,
do you think, especially in a weak division, do you think they have a shot?
Yeah. That is the thing. They are in probably the weakest division. Who's leading that division right now? Is it them?
Tampa.
Tampa. Oh yeah, I guess. I mean, they need to beat Tampa out. I think that's or at least I think. Am I right on that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tampa. They play Saints versus Bucks. Will happen next week.
Okay. Yeah, I think they need to beat out Tampa, I think, to make it. So I think that'll be, and I do think that Tampa's probably the better team, and I don't think it's that close. I think, I mean, the Saints are 7-8, so they can't be that bad, but I wouldn't necessarily go out on a whim and say I like their odds of making the playoffs.
Yeah, they need to win out. Like, it's not a question. They need to win out. That game against the Rams was pretty crucial. I think that game against the Rams, you're right, kind of killed any chance of them getting in as a wild card team. They kind of have to win their division now. Beat the Bucks and then beat the Falcons and hope the Bucks drop a game to the Jags this week, which is possible. Then they can definitely make in, but they really do need a lot of specific things to go right. Um, we'll move on. We'll move on to my team, which I honestly think the outlook is a whole lot better than it once was. We're sitting at a solid, pretty much 50% chance of making it as of right now. But I think our schedule kind of gives us a little bit of an upper hand. We've got the Titans, the Steelers, and the Cardinals to end the season. Those are all very winnable games. And we
Yeah.
just came off a win against probably the second or third best team in the conference now, the Eagles, um, with Drew Lock at quarterback. We're getting Geno Smith back. If we can go on a roll and win all these 3 games, I think we're in. I think
Yeah.
we're in. I think this Seahawks team has been incredibly disappointing this year. Um, their 2 losses to the Rams are definitely the worst of their entire season, and because the Rams have the tiebreaker and are also in contention for that wild card spot, it could be the thing that ends their season. We could very well have had our season die on a missed Jason Myers field goal at SoFi Stadium a month ago. But I think um, we definitely have a shot. And I could see, we'll get to the Vikings later, but I could see the Seahawks and Rams both making it. And I think if I were to give a guess today, that would probably be what I'd say. What about you, Simon? Do you feel more positive than not about the
Um.
Seahawks making the playoffs with that kind of schedule?
I mean, I do. I definitely think they can go 10-7 to finish the year. They can win out. That's not a question to me. I think it's more surrounding what the Rams do. The Rams and just because if the Rams win out, like what's their schedule look like
If the
now?
Rams win out, their schedule is because they just beat the Saints, so they only have 2 games left, and I believe one of them is against the Niners. The other one I don't remember who it was, but it was a pretty cakewalk
It's
game from what I can remember. The Giants,
they
the
have the
Giants.
Giants
So
this upcoming week, and then they have the 49ers. Yeah. So yeah, it's just up to whether they can win out. Because I think they. Do you think they beat the 49ers?
that I think honestly that depends on the game that happens on Christmas Day. If the Ravens beat the Niners and that number 1 seed in the NFC is still up for grabs, I think the Niners will beat the Rams because they will be playing their starters. If the Niners beat the Ravens, I think they have that number 1 seed in the NFC locked up, and I think they rest their starters for that last game, and I think the Rams win. I think that kind of strangely, that 49ers Ravens game kind of means a lot for the lower part of the NFC playoff picture, as kind of contradictory as it is.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I mean, I don't disagree with your take on the fact that you could see 3 teams out of the NFC West make it. I think that
Yep.
is there's a good chance that ends up happening just because of how easy the Seahawks schedule is. But I mean, like you mentioned, this team has been disappointing. What's the odds that they just lose a game they should have won? Like, what's the odds they just drop one of
Yep.
these games and it's just that's it?
It's
Because
definitely a possibility, and I could see it happening, which is the scary part.
yeah,
Um, I do think they still have a chance to get in, even if that does happen, because of the team that we can talk about next, the Vikings. So, out of the 3, because we've talked about the Saints, I think they definitely still have a shot to make it in as a wild card if they win out, but it's mostly they're contending for the division. So it's really 3 teams that have a shot to take the final 2 wild card spots. So someone's going to be the odd one out. And I think even if the Seahawks drop one, it's going to be the Vikings. The Vikings' current schedule um, contains 2 games against the Lions. They have to play the Lions twice.
that's rough.
The chances that they will sweep the Lions is very low. So even if the Rams win out or they drop one against the Niners and the Seahawks also drop one, so the Rams are above the Seahawks, I think the Seahawks will beat out the Vikings just because of how tough that schedule is. Because the other game the Vikings have is against the Packers. Not a cakewalk. Not a cakewalk at all.
Yeah,
So
I don't know.
that's kind of where it's sitting. It looks to me the NFC playoff picture looks a lot clearer than the AFC one does. The AFC one, you have about 7 or 8 teams that can fit the final 2 spots. In the NFC, it's about 3 to 4, and I think the Vikings are currently looking really rough unless they can turn it on in the last little bit. But if they can turn it on, then they control their own destiny. If they win all three, they're in.
Yep.
They're in.
No, I don't think I have much to add on to that. I pretty much agree with you. I think that the chances of them beating Detroit twice is rough. I think that there's a better chance Detroit sweeps them than the Vikings sweeping Detroit. I think so. I don't know. I don't necessarily like their odds, but like you said, yeah, they can do it. If they somehow pull something out of their ass, they can do it. So
Yeah. Which I'm really hoping they don't, frankly. I was so happy that the Bengals won that game against the Vikings. Like that was a great game. I loved every second of that. But um I think that's about it for the NFL playoff picture. I mean, there's some other team like we could talk about the Bucks, but I think they've got a pretty clear shot at winning that division. Otherwise, I think it's pretty much set. But it's going to be a very interesting last 3 weeks, like definitely. And thankfully, I don't have any more school or anything to restrain me from being
that's
a
true.
degenerate and sitting on my couch for 9 hours and watching Red Zone. Like this is the perfect. This is the most wonderful time of the year, and not because of Christmas, but because of NFL football. Thank you, Mr. Goodell. You truly bring the Christmas spirit with you wherever you go.
Okay, so moving into the NHL, we've got the firing of DJ Smith by the Ottawa Senators, who are currently sitting tied for last in the East. I'm not sure where they are compared to some teams in the West. Not quite. The West is a little worse. But still, compared to what we all thought the Ottawa Senators would be prior to this season, it's been a rough go for them because they've got a lot of talent on the roster. They just haven't been able to figure it out. They've had a couple injuries. Like it's been a rough. It's certainly been rough for the last little bit, and it's ended off by them firing DJ Smith. He's gone. They're gonna have to try something completely new to try and revamp things. I mean, I just don't know. I don't know if I have an answer. Like it's what else would you add to this Ottawa Senators team to really improve them? It would be my question, I
Yeah,
guess.
it's so tough because they've had such high expectations, and I mean DJ Smith's been there for a while. Like he was one of the longest tenured um, head coaches before he got fired this last week,
Yeah.
and it sucks because it I feel like every going into every season, going into this season, it always seemed like the Senators are doing something good. They're building something good. Ever since they got Brady Kachuk, it's like this team has potential, but they've never paid that off.
And they
They've never
are
paid that off.
like Shane Pinto is out, Thomas Shabbat. Like this defense looks rough without Shabbat. I won't even lie to you.
Yeah,
Like Sanderson's
yeah.
fine, Chitrin's pretty good. Like Hamannik, legendary Flames trade that made no sense. I mean, what really can you say about it? It's not incredible. Like, but it's just weird that they're not winning because their top
Yeah.
six is really good. Like it's just it seems very strange because when I look at this team, I think playoffs. Maybe not a high playoffs, but I think like they could make it in the back end maybe as a wild card. Like they could, like I don't know. It's very strange to me that they are in the position that they are. I think they should be a lot better, and I don't
And
really
it's
have an
like
answer.
no, and I mean, I don't even know if coaching was the issue. I mean, I guess at this point it's the only thing you can point to and say like this roster should be better than its record. It has to be the coach. But I mean like everything you hear about DJ Smith, like this guy is beloved in the Ottawa locker room. Like it's not like a Mike Babcock situation where he is like actively a cancer in the locker room and is making the team worse. DJ Smith has not been that. There's the reason he's stuck around as long as he has. And it's because the players love him and they genuinely think he makes them a lot better. Um, but I guess when you're at this point where you've been poised to break out as a playoff contender for like 3 to 4 seasons, and you're still sitting and you're still sitting in the bottom half of the Eastern Conference, it's like something has to change. So I don't blame Senators management with their new owner, and Lauer. I don't blame them for pulling the trigger on DJ Smith. And in fact, I think we had a segment when they fired Pierre Dorian, and I think I brought it up in terms of how long do you think it's going to be until DJ Smith goes, and I don't think it was all that long.
No.
Um, they clearly just want to clean house because as good as everything has seemed on paper and as good of a rebuilding job that I think it's seemed like they've done on paper, nothing has worked out. And that's what's tough about it. Because you're just looking for answers, and at this point, you're just kind of firing darts at the board and hoping something works because something has to. There's got to be something they can do. So I guess DJ Smith was just the next domino to fall.
Yep. Yep. I think the more I read on what people have come out and said after his firing, the more I can see good coach, just not maybe the right place. Like Ottawa just needed something new, like you said. I think it's as simple as that. Like even if the players loved him, it's not about what. If you can't show it on the ice, then it doesn't matter, right? Like they can be the nicest person in the world, it won't matter.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. It is. It's I don't know what's next for Ottawa. I guess is kind of what I'm. The thing that I kind of wanted to lead into, because do you really think a coaching change is going to turn around this team? Like, could you imagine the Ottawa Senators right now making the playoffs at the end of the year, bringing in some interim head coach? I don't know who they've had, but
Um. So yeah, they brought in Jock Martin, who I believe coached them in the past. I believe this is like a Daryl Sutter type move,
oh,
where they're bringing in a guy who had success with them in the past. I can't. Um, okay, he didn't coach for them actually. He coached for the Blues, the Blackhawks, and he coached the Nordiques slash Avs in their um, I believe when they were really good.
oh,
Oh no, he did coach the Sens. I don't know why this we could. Yeah, no, he did coach the Sens. He coached the Sens from 1996 to 2004. So
okay,
it is a pretty similar move to Daryl Sutter in terms of they had decent success under him
very veteran
when they
coach,
coached
like
him.
not new to it.
Very veteran coach.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which
very.
might be good for this team, honestly. Like I think bringing in a vet guy, maybe he has more of like an older style, wouldn't be a bad thing. But based on what I've heard from DJ Smith, I feel like that's almost the opposite, opposite two opposite
Yeah.
styles, because it sounds like Smith kind of had more of a like he had more of a buddy buddy relationship with a lot of his players. It's a safe bet that what was his name again? I missed it.
Jacques Martin.
Jock Martin. I think he'll probably have a very good chance of like having quite the opposite. I think he's gonna. If I obviously I don't know much about his body of work, so I can't necessarily. I'm guessing is what I'm saying. Don't take this to the bank, but I think it wouldn't be shocking to see Ottawa being held a lot more accountable, and maybe that's what a lot of these younger players need.
Yeah, and I mean it's something. I can't given with how that approach has worked because we've had this conversation a lot on the
Yeah,
podcast in terms of like that these different coaching styles and whether the like Daryl Sutter type approach actually works in today's NHL. And I think we've kind of come to the conclusion that it's not quite as effective anymore. But
I
in
I still think it
in a
has a
situation like
place, but
it has a
you gotta
place.
walk a line. Like it's like a lot of
Yeah.
things where there is a very very thin line between being like I don't know what the right way to put this would be. Like being
between
hard
being
for.
strict and being an asshole.
Yeah,
Like,
basically. Like, and you can tell when you're in those types of locker rooms, you can feel it, right? Like, you can tell the difference between a coach that's just going to take it out on you because he had a bad morning and a coach that is going to take it out on you because you deserve it and you lost 6-0, right? Like, the best coaches
yeah,
know when to do that stuff. And I think that's something that a lot of the older coaches like Babcock and I mean Daryl Sutter, I guess at times where it's just like it's too much for a lot of young players. Like there have been arguments made where it's just that's why it doesn't work anymore, right? Because those coaches take it too far. I still think that there's a place for it, and I don't think you can just have your coach be buddy buddy because if you want to win, that's not the way. That doesn't work. You can't be best friends with your coach.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think it'll at least be a good perspective change. Um, because I think you're right. It's about treading the line, and we don't know Jock Martin in terms of what he's like in the locker room or what. Obviously, he's had success before, but that was kind of in a different era. We don't know what it's going to look like. But it is a change from everything that we can see. It seems like it's a change in perspective that might be needed for this team. I will say, obviously, very small sample size in terms of the games that Jock Martin has coached now. But you have kind of seen this year in terms of a new coach bump. This is kind of a thing across all sports where a coach gets fired and then immediately after the team starts performing better. Um, you saw that in Minnesota this year, when their coach got fired, I think they rattled off 4 straight wins.
Yeah.
I believe similar thing has happened in St. Louis. They had the whole thing about Kyrou speaking out against, like saying something like, "Oh, I can't comment on that. He's not my coach anymore." But then they did eventually turn it around, and I think I've been playing a little bit. I haven't been watching them too closely, but I think they've been playing a little bit better. The Sens have not seen that. The Sens have immediately started Jock Martin's coaching career by losing 2 straight, um, which again, very small sample size, doesn't really say anything, but a lot of the times you do see that coach bump, but that hasn't happened yet. Maybe it's
Nope.
a little bit of a longer term thing in terms of this new philosophy needs to be instilled in them. But we'll see. There's lots of the season ahead, obviously. And I think for the Sens at this point, it's not about making the playoffs. It's just about showing progress towards something that they can hang with good teams and that they can win close games and that their defense gets better.
Yep. Yep. I think the nice thing with this Ottawa team is that they can't really get worse. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of the main thing that comes from this firing, where it's just the type of thing where it's just no matter what, there's not a lot of risk to it. You already have only 10 wins on the year. What's the worst that can happen,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's all I got to say on it really. Like it's just
Yeah.
you're taking a shot at something and just seeing what'll happen. I mean, maybe they can have some kind of like bull crap like turnaround. Probably not, but I guess who knows? They're not eliminated, so there's always a chance.
No, no. I mean, they can, but again, yeah, that's they definitely can. But you're also right in terms of like they have nothing to lose. They have nothing to lose. They're so far out of it at this point that they have absolutely nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Like
We both
the
thought that they would be
expectations that
very
were on them at
good.
the start of the year. Yeah. So as much as I can kind of nitpick the firing of it, like I at this point, because normally I don't like this in terms of firing a beloved coach like halfway through the season, and when you have a good roster, I'd normally say patience, patience, patience. But this is not just a this season issue.
No.
It's the last 3 years issue. So it was time to pull the trigger. And I don't know how good the Jock Martin's going to do as an interim coach, but maybe they can find somebody else in the offseason. Who knows? Either way, it's things are looking bleak for the Sens. So the biggest story in the NBA is the Pistons are approaching history. They have not been a good basketball team for a long time, but this is probably a new low for the franchise. They have currently, with a loss to the Jazz, who haven't been that great, it was a chance for them to win a game. But they lost to the Jazz yesterday, 119 to 111, and that meant the 25th straight loss for this Detroit Pistons team. The all-time record for most losses in a row in NBA history is 28. So they dropped 3 more games and they have the record. They have good young talent. They have Cade Cunningham. They have Jaden Ivey. They have Asar Thompson, who they picked up in this year's draft, who's been playing pretty well. But Simon, you look at these next 3 games: 2 against the Nets, 1 against the Celtics. Do you see them picking up any wins in those? What's wrong with this Pistons team?
Oh, that's a hard question to answer. I don't know if I have an answer for that, but I don't know if I do. They've lost to a lot worse, and I mean the Nets are pretty good. The Celtics are really good. It's gonna be tough. They've got an uphill battle for them, but I mean, Christmas miracle. They could do it. Who knows? I mean, I don't know. If I was a betting man, I would probably say I think they have a good chance of tying it. But again, who knows? Anything can happen, right? So I guess we'll just have to find out. But
And the game that they will have to potentially beat the record will be against Canada's own Toronto Raptors.
yeah, the
Which is
Raptors have not been bad.
Yeah, the Raptors have been pretty mediocre. So that one's probably, I think, the best, other than another game against the Jazz coming up. I think their best chance to snap the streak. Because then they've got Rockets, who have been pretty good. Jazz, we talked about. Warriors, Nuggets, Kings. It's not looking good.
How is this team 2-26? They have like 7 players, or how many? One second, I'll actually count it. 7. They have 7 players averaging more than 10 points per game, and they have quite a few guys who are not far off getting higher than that. Like, they have so much young talent on this team, it's nuts to me. Like, the more I look at it, the more I'm just blown back by the fact that this team sucks. I really thought they'd be rather good. Like, I'm a big fan of Cade Cunningham's game. I've always liked him since he's come into the league. And he's just he's been the bright spot, but it's not been enough, obviously. Like, 22 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists. That's not bad. It's not bad. He's got Bogdan Bogdanovic, 21, 2 and 2. I mean, I guess you just people have to step up, but I don't know who. I guess James Wiseman was a story before this season, and on and off throughout his career as a fairly big bust, because a lot of people, including me, thought he'd be very good coming into the NBA, and he's currently sitting on the bench averaging 7 points, 4 rebounds. He's one guy that I kind of hoped would have a breakout season this year. It hasn't happened yet. I mean, and they've got plenty of guys who you just look at as, obviously you kind of hope that they'd be better, but like Killian Hayes is another one for me where I look at it and go, I definitely thought he'd be better by now, and he's 9 points, 4 assists. Like, they just have people who they just have busts. Bust is a mean word in this, but I don't know what else to call them, really. Maybe that's too early. But it's just, they need these young guys to step up. I don't know.
They do, and I mean, because you're right, they have the talent. Because I think Cade Cunningham recently came out and said, like, we're not 2-26 bad. And
No.
I mean, I kind of believe that, just based on like the talent they have on the team. Cade Cunningham alone should give them one extra win. It's just, I honestly think it's just like a combination of this team not being very good. I mean, for the talent they have, it's not like they were challenging for the playoffs anytime soon. But it also is, I think, just significant terrible luck in terms of losing this many games.
Yeah.
They started off the season with a winning record because, I mean, they started off 2-1, and then just since then it's just been awful again and again and again and again.
2-26 is the worst schedule I think I've seen in my lifetime of watching basketball. Holy smokes, that's bad.
It reminds you of the teams the Philadelphia 76ers teams when they
Yeah,
were
yeah, it really
like
does.
unabashedly and unashamedly tanking. My phone just fucking fell again. This is not a great setup. Um, yeah, but it reminds you of those teams.
Oh,
I need to figure out how to do that. There we go. We're back. But it reminds me of those 76ers teams who were trying to lose.
yeah,
And this team isn't trying to lose by all indications, which makes this even more embarrassing, really.
yeah. No, I don't disagree. Like, I think this is really embarrassing for this entire franchise and a lot of players on it. Like, you can go even further down the list of players who I think everybody involved just thought would be playing better. Marvin Bagley is another one that sticks out to me, where he was a second overall pick, I believe, in 2018, and he, I mean, 10 points per game, 5 rebounds. I personally would have expected more from him at this point in his career, but I guess
Yeah,
not. I don't know. This team should be a lot better. It's really disappointing because
I
they have
really
so
should
much
be.
young talent that at least I definitely would have hoped would be working out for them a lot better than it is, but it's just not. They don't have they haven't been able to make it work. Is that Kevin Knox that I see there? Yeah, another player that I think a lot of people thought would be a lot better. Like
Yeah,
they've got so many players on their roster that just this is probably the most busts on a roster I've ever seen. Like it is pretty nuts when you look at it like that. They just need more.
yeah. And it's kind of just like the going gets worse for a team that's already had a pretty rough last almost like 15 years.
Yeah.
Since 2000 the 2009 2010 season. Can you guess how many times they've made the playoffs? In that whatever how many years that is.
Well,
It's like
the Drummond teams weren't
almost
bad, but I can't remember if they were a playoff team. I'd guess twice.
perfect, right on the money.
Yeah.
And in both of those, they lost in the first round,
Yeah.
and they weren't very good to begin with. The two seasons they made it, they had records of 44 and 38 and 41 and 41, so barely above 500.
What years were
This
that?
team
Were
has
those
not been
both
good for a while.
the drum?
2015, 2016,
Yeah.
and then 2018, 2019.
Oh, really? Was that'd be
Yeah,
after Drummond? No. No, that wouldn't be. Drummond was still there at that point. But yeah,
yeah,
at the very least since Drummond left, this team has been terrible. Which is weird to
yeah.
say,
Well,
especially considering
since
how bad, or not bad, but not how not as good Drummond has been since he left. So it's just, and for everyone involved, it hasn't been working out.
yeah, and I mean to your point, since that season, um, with the impact of Drummond, they have gotten above 20 wins in a season only once in 2021, 2022, and they only did that by 3 games.
And
20
they're
wins,
not
20
using the
wins,
picks.
23
They're not
wins,
using the picks
17
very
wins.
well.
No.
Like, Kate Cunningham,
Other than
obviously that
maybe
one
Kate
worked out pretty
Cunningham.
damn well, but I mean, everybody knew he was going first overall, so whoop de doo. The
Yeah.
rest of them have not been very good. Like, there's a point when I
Yeah.
thought, like, I'm pretty sure it was Edwards that got taken above Wiseman, and I thought that was dumb. I thought Wiseman should have gone first overall that year, I think. Which should show the hype that he
In
originally had.
hindsight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in hindsight, it's not anywhere close to that, right? But it's just, I don't even know with this team. I don't have an answer for you. I think it's a whole. I think you need to, if things don't improve at all, you need to do a full rehaul completely, because it's not going to get better. Like
Yeah. And
you need to help out
I
Cunningham.
think you're right. And I think a couple things. I think first, just to kind of bring up the comparison you made to the 76ers earlier, they are the team that holds the record with 28
Yeah,
straight, and they also
I
hold the
believe that.
second spot with 26 straight. So they're reaching that level. In terms of what you said about blowing it up, we kind of talked before the podcast about Monty Williams,
Yeah,
current coach of the Pistons, who I believe I might have to double check myself, but I believe he's the highest paid coach in the NBA after his success with the Suns, bringing him in to hopefully change some things. Do you
which
think
worked out pretty well.
that? Yeah. Do you think at this point you can fire him?
Me. Like, that should never happen. Like, that. I don't know. Obviously, the NBA is a little
But
different, but it's just
with the contract you give him, and with the
that's the
he's only had one season.
that
He's
is
only
the
had one
only. Oh my
season.
God, Caleb, 25 losses in a row. I mean,
Yeah.
if if Huska for the Flames lost 25 games in a row, would you be calling for his
Yes.
head?
Yes. I mean, yeah, you would. But at
Yeah,
this point, it's like, is the coaching change going to do anything? Is he the problem?
no, I don't know, but you got to do something, right? Like, if they break,
Yeah.
like they're like, what else do you do here? Like, do you trade for another superstar who's, by the way, not gonna want to come here to help out Cunningham? Because that's the issue with Detroit. It is so like the team, like it's just they're in such a bad spot right now that I don't really have an answer for them because I don't know who they could even trade for that would actually want to stick around long term. With how like with the history this team has, like who
Yeah.
wants to sit here and just unless they truly believe they can be the thing to turn this around, who wants to come here and just lose games with Cade Cunningham? Like it's just the guy needs some help.
It's such a rough spot. Um, and I mean, like, the thing is, he's had success. I don't know. It's so hard to say because you're right. I mean, like a 25 game losing streak should get people fired.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm at the point where it's like I don't think anybody's gonna be able to come in and do
No,
any
I agree.
better.
I don't disagree with that at all. I just think that I mean it's
I
a,
mean, he's only 2 years removed from being coach of the year.
yeah, well he's only one day removed from his 25th loss in a row. Like
Yeah.
it's just it's I don't know. I if I was the GM, he'd be gone. But then again, the contract makes that rough. So I don't know. That's too
Yeah,
many losses
I'll
for
see
a
if I can
team
get.
that's not trying to lose.
Yeah, but you have with the contract, it's yeah, historic. You're saying historically lucrative, so I'll get the details on it. That just makes it impossible. So it's 6 years, $78.5 million. Um, and eclipses Greg Popovich's 11.5 million. Um, and
Oh, the
only
Pistons
a
are
handful of NFL
screwed.
coaches have a bigger. Yeah,
That's
highest
rough.
paid coach in the NBA, more than Popovich, Steve Kerr, Spoelstra for the Heat. Um,
And those are three coaches who actually
only
like they're consistently good.
legendary coaches.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Like Monty Williams
the
is he was good with the Suns, but before that, I mean, it's not like he had a long tenure.
yeah,
Um,
and just to put it in perspective in terms of the larger kind of sporting landscape, he makes more than every MLB coach, every NHL coach, any college basketball, football, any of that. More so like more than Nick Saban. Um, only in all of sport, at least North American sport, only Bill Belichick, Sean Payton, Pete Carroll, and Sean McVay make more. That's it.
Jesus,
That's it.
that's wild.
And all of those people have had sustained success, and all of their teams are currently at least somewhat good. I guess Popovich was kind of having a rough year with the Spurs, but his resume speaks for himself.
Pats haven't been very good lately, but I mean, you could see why
Oh yeah,
Belichick's
that
still here.
that's also true. But Bill Belichick same kind of thing as Popovich. His
Yeah,
resume
where
speaks
it's
for
just
himself.
like people know he's gonna if he wants to win, he'll win.
Yes. Yeah, it's the Pistons are in a terrible situation. I don't even know how you get out of it. I don't even
No,
know
and
what you do.
that has been the story, or that has been the main point I think we've both made here. Where it's just like, sure, we've thrown out ideas. I would not, if the contract wasn't as bad, I wouldn't be opposed to trading him, but or not trading him. Sorry, getting rid of him, just cutting all, because you have to do something, right? Like that contract cannot hold you from like because what if it goes longer? What if they get to 28 and they're like, ah. we broke the record, darn, and then they lose another 10 because they're sad about it. Like, what then?
Yeah, because it's not out of the realm of possibility. I
No,
mean,
it's
like,
not.
because we were looking at their schedule, their winnable games, I think, are the Raptors, who they previously lost by like 30 points to, um, the Jazz, who they just lost to, um, yesterday, and then they've got like a murderer's row. The
Yeah.
Spurs, I think it probably ends with the Spurs, but that's not until January 10th, and at that point they've already lost another one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10, 9 games.
If it
So
doesn't end with the Spurs, though, like, Houston aren't crazy good. Washington isn't crazy good. Like, those three games right there are very winnable for them. But, like,
yeah, and they play Houston before that, but I think
oh, they
Houston's
do.
better
Yeah.
than you think.
Yeah, no,
Houston's better than you think.
yeah, I'm aware. I don't. I'm not saying Houston is terrible. I'm just saying that they're more winnable than a Bucks or Golden State, which isn't controversial.
Yeah, I mean Golden State does technically have a worse record than Houston right now.
Do they really? God,
Yep.
Steph Curry's a bust.
I think that's the ultimate takeaway from this segment. Steph Curry's a bust.
Yeah, take it to the house. Don't cut, don't cut Monty Williams. What they should do is the Warriors should just cut Steph Curry. He's a bust. He's out of his
Yeah.
prime. Not as good anymore. 28 points. Should have 29. What's he doing anymore anyway?
Yeah, I don't know. Garbage player.
Yeah. You know what? Actually, to add one more thing onto this that I just noticed that is crazy. Chris Paul is averaging 8.5 points per game right now. What the hell? Why is he so bad? He's got 8 points or 8 assists per game. So it's still like
Is he even starting for them?
he's averaging 28 minutes per game. So you'd think he'd be better.
Oh, wow.
But yeah.
I guess he's just old. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you would have thought that he'd still be able to shoot. Like that's a little nuts. I don't know. Warriors are a weird team, but that's not the team we're talking about.
Yeah.
We were talking about the Pistons. They suck. You could throw me in there. They'd probably win just as many games.
Yeah, okay, wait. What before we move on, that's just what okay, the worst regular season of all time is the 2011-2012
Yeah,
Charlotte
Bobcats.
Bobcats.
Yeah.
They only won seven games. Think the Pistons are going to challenge for that?
No, the Bobcats were significantly worse. Like when I look at this Pistons team, Cunningham is like the one shining thing, right? Let's like what year exactly did you say was it 2011?
2011 to 2012.
2012 Bobcats. Like if we actually take a peek at their roster, you can see what I mean. Like you probably won't recognize a
Yes.
single name. Like they had
I
you actually there's one name you'll recognize.
I think I'll recognize more than you think. I've looked into this Bobcats team before.
Oh, have you? Okay. Well, yeah, Kemba Walker is like the one that would stand
Yep.
out. He was a rookie at the time. And he was not the
Yep.
Kemba Walker that we later kind of saw. Like they were like how many points did Kemba Walker actually average that season? He was where is it? Come on. Where's points per game? Why is it all the way at the back? He averaged 12 points per game. The best was by Corey Maggot, I believe it was, and Gerald Henderson, who are two names that are not exactly household names anymore. So, I
Yeah.
mean, this team was bad. This team was worse. So, I.
Although it is only a partial season right now, but the Pistons currently have a worse winning percentage. They currently have the
Do
worst
they
winning
really?
percentage of all time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but what I mean is I think that Detroit at some point can win a couple.
Yeah, no, it's
Like,
true.
I
And they
feel
also
like-
have the benefit of playing the Spurs a couple of times, who currently have the ninth worst winning percentage in NBA history with their 2024 season.
Jeez. I don't know. I mean, we'll
Some
see.
bad basketball.
Yeah,
Some bad basketball being played
at
this
least
year.
yeah, I was gonna say at least the Spurs have the like 7 foot whatever shining beacon of hope.
Yeah.
He's learning basketball tips from Bedard. It's gonna be great. He's gonna bounce back. The whole thing's gonna work out great.
Thank you, everybody, for watching the Trick Play podcast this week. If you haven't already, make sure to check us out Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, wherever you can find us. If you're looking for us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, boom, I've got it by now, right there. Fresh Take Network. You know where to get us. Look up Fresh Take on your Apple Podcasts or Spotify, whatever you may get. But yeah, check us out. We'll be back next week. Taking a couple weeks off in the last little bit, but we will be back and consistent from there on out.
Yeah, that's the
Um,
plan.
yeah, yep. Um, but yeah, I'll do a super quick shout out. I feel like I've been negative on the last couple editions of the podcast, and I've been mad, but it's the Christmas spirit, so I'm gonna give a positive shout out. And I think you'll get a kick out of this, Simon. So my shout out this week goes to my girlfriend Bo, because she got me, I think, the best Christmas present I'm gonna get all year, which are these amazing Seahawks sunglasses, these bejeweled Seahawks sunglasses, um, that are
Wow.
modeled after the Seahawks win glasses that they've been putting on this season after they win a game. I love those so much. And these are also fantastic. These are incredible. I cannot really like see anything through them, but it doesn't matter because I think I just look incredible. And this is truly my final form. So shout out to my girlfriend for taking the time to make these so that I can truly um,
You can
be
truly
the
feel
insane
blind
Seahawks
whenever the
fan.
Seahawks win.
Yeah, exactly. That's always been my goal as a person. Like I think my 19 years of life have been leading to this specific moment.
Oh yeah, for
So
sure.
that's my shout out for the week.
Um. Oh, I don't know really if I have. I have to come up with a shout out now. Shout out Igor Sharangovich for the Flames for being surprisingly good out of nowhere and turning this season around. Almost like that, and Connor Zary. Put Connor Zary's name in your head for Calder, because there is not a lot of people talking about him, but he has given
That
Bedard a run for his damn money, and it's been entertaining to watch.
I don't know about that, Simon. I feel
Yeah, you're lagging a bit, by the way. I don't think you can hear me. Okay, I'm gonna wrap this up. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure to check us out in the next couple weeks. I think Caleb something or other may have died, so that'll just do it. Um, what else? What else do I have to hit on? Make sure to check us out everywhere you can while we look at Caleb's MacBook keyboard. Make sure to check us out on Instagram, TikTok, all of those places. We generally have quite a few
hear me.
shorts. Oh yeah, we can hear. I can hear you now. But we have quite a few shorts generally coming out on TikTok, Instagram, all that. Make sure to check us out there. Yep.